So, in my analysis of world history, I see that when civilizations rise, there are three factors at play. The first is energy, this sort of hunger of the people to rise up and to make their place in the world. That's number one, energy. Second is openness. How willing are you to learn from others? How willing are you to reflect on your mistakes and to improve on them? How open are you? That's number two. The third is cohesion. Do you identify as a people to work together, to coordinate together in order to achieve larger goals? If you look at all great empires, they all started off as these borderland tribes that, because of energy, openness, and cohesion, were able to dominate their part of the world. This includes the Athenians, this includes the Persians, this includes Macedonians, this includes the Romans, this includes the Americans, this includes the British. And today, I would argue like the new empire that's coming out on the world stage is the Pax Judaica, Israel. So among the Israelis, we see energy, openness, and cohesion.
And how do you assess within this framework what's happening with the political West, that is the United States and Europe? Because whatever variable one tends to look at, if it's the politics, the economic, the social cohesion, or yeah, there seems to be a lot of a gloom, and
Yeah.
for good reasons perhaps. So what direction do you see the Western world taking now?
Yeah, so according to this framework, the Western world, especially the Anglo-American Empire, is in rapid decline. So you look at energy, like how willing are people to work hard? I mean, the reality is that you have these young people in the West who want to be social media influencers. They expect to make $600,000 a year being social media influencers, and that is complete outrageous. And so, Trump talks a lot about bringing back manufacturing to America, but who's going to work these blue collar jobs? Who's going to want to just go and work in factories for like 40, 50 years? And the answer is like not that many young people. The reality is that young people nowadays, they prefer to just watch Netflix. They prefer to just play video games. They prefer to hang out on social media. They really don't want to invest their time and energy in creating a great society. So in terms of energy, the West is definitely in decline. Openness, you see a lot of crackdowns on free speech, especially universities. You have DEI, and now you have a crackdown on speech that promotes Palestinian rights, that advocates against the Palestinian, what's happening in Palestine, basically. During the COVID lockdowns, you had a tremendous clampdown on free speech. So in terms of openness, we see a massive decline in the Western world, and that is, I think, very problematic. And the third factor is cohesion, right? So everyone would agree that the biggest problem in America is political polarization, where the left and the right hate each other. Nowadays, they've done polling where if you are a Democrat, you absolutely refuse to remarry a Republican, regardless of attraction, regardless of salary. You're like, if you are on the other political divide, I will refuse to engage with you. In terms of cohesion, America is split pretty evenly between left and right. And this is happening throughout the Western world, especially with the increase in immigration. So unfortunately, all the signs, all the historical signs are pointing towards rapid decline over the next 5 to 10 years.
It is an interesting development, the rise of political identities in the United States. Well, also to a large extent, growing extent also in Europe. The whole idea of the nation state would be, it appeals to some of the, I guess, the instincts in human nature. That is, that we divide ourselves into in groups versus out groups, and the in group become quite distinctive. Much like we want to reproduce the family, we have a instinct to reproduce the nation. But when the out group becomes people within your own group, within the nation, and this is how they speak of each other, though, that you said hate, but I think you said hate. Well, they truly see the political opposition not as simply sharing their future, but and having different paths, but they actually see them as a threat to the ideals and the nation itself. And again, it's both sides using this rhetoric. So it's quite frightening in terms of the ability to stay together in one country if this is the sentiment one has towards the political opposition. But to what extent are we doomed, though? That is us here living in the Western world, because there's a big difference, I guess, between, well, you can go through periods of rise and decline, but when do we tilt into collapse here?
Yeah, so that's a great point where social cohesion is a huge problem in the Western world, especially in America. And so the question then is, why is this happening? Why is there so much social polarization, political polarization? And for that, let's look at three theories, okay? The first is Peter Turchin, and he proposed the idea of elite overproduction. And so he looked at the Roman civil wars. He looked at the French Revolution. He looks at all these times of political tumult. And he identifies elite overproduction as the main factor leading to civil war. And his reasoning is that it's not the war. The world isn't divided between rich and poor. It's divided between the have a lot and like have some but want some more. Okay, between the upper nobility and between the lower nobility. The problem is that as society increases in wealth, there's more elite, but there's only a limited positions of power. And so these elite compete for each other for these limited positions of power. And you could argue that's exactly what's happening in the United States right now, where you have these Republican oligarchs, as expressed by big tech, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Larry Ellison, these individuals versus the financial elite, which is represented by the Democratic Party. So you can almost see that the second Trump administration is really a civil war between these different oligarchs in America. So that's a first theory. The second theory that we have is, Thomas Piketty wrote this great book called Capital in the 21st Century. I'm sure you've read. I'm sure that your viewers have read it. But he proposed the idea that over time, capitalism naturally leads to a renter economy where if you just engage in speculation, you make more money than if you actually engage in productive labor. So if you put your money in the stock market, you should see about 5% any returns. If you go open a restaurant or you start a factory, you should see 2% any returns. So everyone's going to put their money in speculative capital. And that leads to the over-financialization of society, and that leads to basically financial collapse at some point because no one's producing any real wealth. And the third theorist is Oswald Spengler, who theorized that all civilizations are organic and they have organic life cycles, meaning that you're born, you rise up, you mature, then you die, and this is just a natural life cycle. There's nothing you can do about it. So if you look at these three theories and you apply their framework to America, America is really in a lot of trouble. And not just America, but the Western world, because how do you deal with elite overproduction? Well, the only way you can deal with it is through revolution, civil war, just through cataclysmic social destruction, where most of the elite is eliminated so that there's more sociability in America. Okay, so Peter Turchin tells us we're screwed. Then you look at Thomas Piketty, and you have the monopolization of capital, the consolidation of capital in America, where now only a few companies account for like a third of stock market wealth, right? So you have the Magnificent Seven, and they account for like a third of the value of the Standard and Poor stock market index. That's very problematic because as monopolies, they don't have to create value. All they have to do is just maintain their position. And that's why we see these, this artificial intelligence bubble happening in the United States, which is very perilous and precarious for the American economy because you're putting all this money into these data centers, producing a product, AI, that has no actual social benefit and which could threaten to destroy millions of jobs. And then Oswald Spengler tells us that societies die just like as people, and maybe for the sake of humanity, that's a very good thing. So if you look at these three theories, it's very hard to figure out a way out of the social decline that the Western world is facing right now.